Hello, everyone. You're welcome this evening to Early Intervention Matters podcast. Thank you for joining us again for another interesting session. Just an introduction that Early Intervention Matters podcast is a platform where we discuss a lot around children's development, neurodevelopmental conditions, but we also talk about other things that are related to children's well-being, including emotional health, resilience. And we're very fortunate today to have a very important guest who I was fortunate to have met on a networking platform. I was immediately captivated by the work she does. So I'm so pleased that she has joined us today for what promises to be a very interesting session. So I would like our guest Shruthi decide to say hello, and then I'll give her bio, talk about her experience. Hello, Shruti. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thank you so much. It's truly my pleasure to be on here.
Thank you, Shruti. So, just a bit about Shruti. Shruti is joining us from the United States. Her story is really interesting. It's one of courage and conscious transformation. Shruti spent 12 years immersed in corporate life, chasing goals, managing teams, and meeting the demands of a fast paced work. And I'm sure many of us can relate to this. Eventually, she felt called towards a life with more meaning, connection, and authenticity. That inner calling led her to shift paths, embracing work rooted in mindfulness, community, and the values that she holds at Mudita Circles through her work with Kids Yoga Initiative. And we will be learning more about this. Shruti has a podcast, the Conscious Children Project, and I would encourage everyone to key into that podcast because I've listened to some of it and it's great learning. Shruti brings a conscious, a curious, and compassionate perspective to parenthood, learning from experts, panels, and parents, and even children themselves. So you can see why I am so excited about today's session. So thank you so much, Rudy, for joining us. She'll tell us a bit more about it towards the end of the conversation so that our guests can also log in there because it's great value. So you're welcome, Shruti.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good. So, as a pediatrician, I've been part of lots of children's stories and journey and families as well. And there's no denying that there's an increase in emotional and mental health issues in young children. And many children are unable to verbalize this. And parents always feel at a loss when you know that there's something wrong with your child and you don't know what it is and you can't get to the bottom of it and your child becomes really distressed. One thing that I have picked up in my practice is that sometimes there is no join up. The parents have not been able to get the language to communicate with the children. The children have not been able to get the necessary way in which they can communicate how they feel. And so, what we're going to learn today from this conversation is how we as parents, can be able to do this better. Many parents start off with the best intention to be able to meet their children's needs. But sometimes we struggle when we're not knowing how to reach that child in emotional distress. So I'm particularly interested in this because it's a big, big concern that I see every day in my clinical practice. I can tell you that a lot of consultations I get on a regular basis is to do with children's emotional distress, not coping at school. And some children have had to leave school, they're being homeschooled. So this is how much it can impact on the lives of children and their parents as well. So it's a very important topic that we're talking about today. So with this introduction, how what are the early signs of emotional skills? Can you talk a bit more about what we mean by emotional skills in children and what are the red flags when this is not functioning or developing as it should?
Yes, certainly. I'm not a clinical psychologist, but psychology as a subject is something that I'm really passionate about. And even as a kid, I was always curious as to why certain people reacted certain way versus the others. So I think my perspective is coming from more of being observant, being curious, and learning from how people are around me. I'll give you two examples of two situations that happened in my class. The first one is one of the kid had brought the fortune teller, the paper one that they make and play with, and I happened to accidentally throw it because I wanted to clean up the space, and I accidentally discarded that. And when the child realized that the piece of a toy that she was playing with was gone, she started to cry, which is a good way to express distress, right? Uh, and that minute, I apologized. I hugged her, told her, or gave her a solution that I will make couple more in order to make her feel better. That was the solution that I came up with, and I asked her if that solution would work, and she acknowledged. At the same time, there was another kid watching both of us silently. She ran to the trash can, pulled up that piece of paper, tried to fix it, and brought it back to her. And that to me was empathy and having that awareness that that kid was not feeling that herself, but she saw the feelings of another child, and that evoked empathy in herself. Which are these are the things that I observe and pick up on and try to amplify, saying that was such a wonderful thing that the child did. Another girl showed empathy in a situation where one other child was in distress. Another example that I will share is a little boy who's on spectrum. If you come into my class, you would think that he is not participating in the class at all because he's constantly moving. Sitting still is very hard. And so if it was anyone, they would think that he's not being active, he's not participating, or he's lacking certain skill sets. But to me, he was doing the best he could. And I'll tell you what made me realize that as well is when another child came to the class, a new kid came to our class, and he thought this was a dance class. And this was the kid who stepped in. A kid who was on the spectrum was the one who stepped in and explained the whole structure of the class, saying we start with warm ups. And he explained why we do warm ups. He gave the context. He remembered even the tiny details I would have mentioned one time in one of the classes. And he explained even better than I would have explained myself. And that's when I understood that emotional intelligence might show up differently in different people, and we should not judge or put them all in the same box, and give them the space to express and share, and also help them by validating their feelings, if that made sense. And in terms of red flags, you know, I am not an expert, but I think the way that I keep an eye on it, or rather, let me step back. Anytime I enroll a new kid into the class, I inquire a lot of information from the parents in terms of their likes, their dislikes, if they are a shy person, an introvert, what gets them talking. So I gather all of this information, making sure the first day of the class, I make them feel comfortable, make them feel seen, make them feel at home. And even after all of the effort that I would have done over time, if I see the child has been not responding or has been feeling overwhelmed, and even with a little bit of support, they are not able to cope up, that is when I bring the attention to the parents. Without judging, I take the feedback that I would have gathered and bring it to the attention of the parents. And again, we will not put everyone in the same box because I have that information from the parents about their developmental stage, what they are, what they can, and what they cannot do. Like, I cannot put the boy on the spectrum with everyone else because I know I cannot judge the boy on the spectrum on stillness because he cannot sit still. But I would see if he's connecting with others, check him on other aspects. So the lens that I look at is different for every child. So the red flags for one may not be the red flag for the other. And even the time of the day also matters. If they've come back from a school and have a long day, they may not be willing to participate. So I think it is about one, having the patience and the presence to understand and help provide the space for that communication to happen, whether verbally or non-verbally.
Thank you. That's wonderful, Shruti. I love what you said there, that you don't use the same lens to look at every child because every child is different. So, and that's one key thing that we need to have at the back of our minds. So, when you're talking about your regular yoga class, what usually brings children to the yoga classes? Is it just for why do they come? Why do they bring them there? Is just an activity they're interested in, or is there other reasons parents bring the children to the classes?
That's really a great question, and I wish I had like a fancy answer to it. But it always starts by an interest from the parent, that a parent sees the value in the program or yoga, for instance, and they want to, you know, start the kid to get that kind of support and need. So the initiation is always the parents. And I've had many kids who joined because their parents asked them to join. And there are kids who joined because they saw their friends doing it and their friends were part of it. And instead of having a play date at the same time, they thought might as well join the yoga class and do it together.
No,
But
that's
yeah, once they join though, they I have seen over the time, and it does not happen overnight. It's about consistent practices over 6 months. I've had kids come back and say that I feel like this is my second home. This is a school better than school.
oh
And
wow.
when I hear things like this, it makes me really feel like they're not coming here just because someone is telling them to do, but they want to come here. And teenagers, they share that even if they were asked to choose or drop a class, this would not be a class that they would drop. So things like this really makes me feel like I'm doing something right. I'm providing some value addition to them.
That's fantastic. I mean, there's nothing as rewarding as a child saying they want to come, and seeing them getting value from your sessions is one of the most positive feelings that you will get. Just because you want
Yes.
them to enjoy what they're doing. There's so many children at school who don't enjoy going to school,
Right.
and I think that's a testament to the way that you actually value them as individuals. So it's also good that you are doing that and valuing them as individuals. And just to talk
If I can
about,
add one more, sorry.
yeah,
If I can just add one more. The toughest student that I've had so far is my own son. I mean, it's always the case, right? Your own children is tend to be the hardest. And initially he came in because his friends were there. And then there were days that he would say, I don't want to come. And there was one class that I was taking online and he was still sleeping then. And then when he woke up, he was like, why didn't you wake me up? I wanted to do it. And yeah, so that for me to see that transition from one who was resistant to trying something to now asking for it makes me feel like I have done something right.
definitely, that's such a positive story. When a child feels that they've missed out on something that they really would like to do, that is really, really positive. They wouldn't be saying that if it was regular school. They'll be happy they've missed it. So that's really good. So tell us a bit about, just in a small nutshell, about, because not everybody really understands the basis of yoga, what yoga does, as in a small nutshell, so that our audience can understand what we're talking about. Some people know about yoga, some people don't. So I just felt it would be good to have you talk about that for our audience.
Certainly. I think I will try to keep it as simple as possible. Yoga in itself means union of the body and mind. So it helps bring the movement, the awareness, and the breath all together, helping us stay present. And for us, yoga, when we think about yoga, we often think about the physical aspect of yoga, but yoga is much more than the physical aspect. Yes, we start with physical. That's like the entry point. You start physical first, and then you get exposed to like the concentration. You learn how to concentrate. And the most important thing, or the transformation that I have seen in myself, is the self awareness aspect. Is when you start practicing the meditative aspects or breathing practices, it will bring the awareness back to yourself, understanding what are your true likes and dislikes. What are you meant to do? What is it that drives you? So, having that understanding is something that I have truly enjoyed yoga for and go back to always.
Wonderful. As you're talking about yoga, I'm saying to myself, all my children that I see for assessments could benefit from having things like yoga to help them, because what you've spoken about are things that they struggle with. Many of them could do with activities. I'm glad you mentioned something like you have an online class, because I think that would be so important for people who want to connect. So going back to the emotional abilities, and we know that children have lots of feelings and the feelings can vary. And many of them, we've said, struggle to name those feelings. So
Mhm.
why is it important for children to be able to name these feelings, and how can parents teach this at home?
That's an excellent question. Naming feelings is very important, and I think helping when parents help them with understanding the name and help them kind of connect the feeling to a name, it will help them build those vocabulary, and it will help the child feel empowered, and kind of when they feel a certain feeling, they know what it is and why it is happening. And for the longest time, I was not aware of about naming the feelings. That, I only learned about it when I read the book, How to Talk to Kids when they don't listen. I think authored by two of them, King, and I'm not really sure, but that's when I learned about why naming a feeling is so important and how it empowers children. In terms of how parents can make that space, the number one I would say is books for sure, because books often passes on the message so subtly that sometimes we may not be able to vocalize it or verbalize it. And the second, I would say, this I learned from one of the moms that I interviewed for the podcast. She said she has a feeling board in the kitchen or somewhere in the house where she puts up feelings like I am exhausted, I am tired, helping everybody in the house to know what her feeling is. That way they empathize about why she's reacting a certain way. And also for the kids to understand that even adults, grown ups, have big emotions and they are also figuring out or reacting in certain way. And so it goes both ways, that even kids, as us as kids, we also have big feelings and adults also have big feelings. By demonstrating how we react to that will help them empathize and connect with us. When you're vulnerable is when you kind of bond and connect, right? So opening up that space, opening up that way of connection would be wonderful for children. And movies also, I would say, like if you watched Inside Out, that's an excellent movie. Even as an adult, I really loved how they depicted emotions with colors, with anger in red, joy in yellowish green. So I think everything was done so well. So my first number one would be books and movies, or talking to your children about a situation you had in the past, explaining how you felt and breaking it down for how you would react. And this is something that I learned from one of the early childhood expert during one of the interviews as well. Is what she said is, when a child is expressing a distress or a negative emotion, don't just say no. Always give them a response of how to react. So if you just say that when a child is hitting, saying no, it's not okay, give them a way to respond, an appropriate way to respond as well. So next time they know that they're feeling a certain way, they know the vocabulary and also know how to respond, which is appropriate.
Well, this is very good information. I think one of the things that you said that's really so important is the adults being also, because as adults, as parents, we tend to keep everything in. We're only focused on the child. So the child doesn't even understand how the adult is feeling. So when they're having their emotional outbursts, they don't know how that's impacting on the adult. I think you've raised the key point about adults also having to be vulnerable, to be open about their feelings, because that would also make the child realize that the adult too has emotions, and they are also feeling in a different way of feeling exhausted. That is so key. Thank you for sharing that. I think it would make a lot of sense for lots of families, and I just want to encourage our parents out there to take on board that, because this is one thing I see when a lot of parents I see get completely flat out and exhausted. They've been putting all the energy in just trying to find out something that works with the child when they're having the outburst. So parents being able to name their own emotions and put it out there and communicate that to the child would be very useful.
When I spoke to the teenagers, one thing that they said is that we don't want parents to jump to conclusions or assume, but validate our feelings. When we are in distress or we come bearing those feelings, validate our feelings first. Listen to us with an open ears, and then maybe another day come and advise us on what needs to change or what went wrong. If we make that space, then they know to express as well as they know the vocabulary and also learn how to express. And by giving the space, we are saying that it is okay for them to have those feelings as well. And next time they will feel confident and comfortable to come and share with us. But if we close the door or if we don't make that space, then they will shut down and probably go into a shell, which is not good for them and not good for us as well.
I think what you said is so important. I have experienced that myself. So I've got two daughters who are adults now. And I think that there was a tendency when they were growing up that if they came to tell you, wanted to say something, I always kind of gave an answer to them to say, this is the way you should respond to this and all that. And they used to get really annoyed with me. And I used to wonder why they were annoyed with me. And I would to say, well, this is what should happen and this is that. But then I had to take a step back. And this is just to say, as parents, that no matter how experienced we are as parents, we need to be vulnerable to learn. So this is me as a pediatrician who's been used to seeing children for over 20 years plus. And one day I sat having this conversation with my younger daughter, and she said the fact that somebody is actually listening and not jumping to conclusions and saying, I have the answer. It just changed the narrative. And I could see that a lot of that tense emotional feelings just reduced because I was ready to listen and I validated that feeling. And I didn't just say, no, don't, that's that, which is the tendency that I think a lot of us as parents
Yeah.
have. It's like, you are the child, I'm the parent, I know the answer. So
Yes.
this is a real eye opener, and I feel that as parents we should be vulnerable. Because when I look at some children who have developed long-term anger, some children have had been so angry with their parents, and it's because they've just felt that their feelings were not validated. And so they've
Right.
carried that anger for a long time. We need to talk. We need to talk to our children. So what tools can help support emotional expression?
That's an excellent question. I think, there are several tools like physical exercise is a good way to release that restlessness. So I think movement of some kind is always helpful. So if we can build that habit of moving once a day in whatever shape or form, it does not have to be through gym. It could be simple walks, taking a walk with your child or taking your pet out and have a conversation with your child at that time. So, some kind of a movement always helps release the restlessness out. And other tools like yoga, it helps you build that awareness of yourself and helps you self regulate. It provides you the tools that you didn't know you lacked. And also stories. I think stories are always wonderful because we as humans always relate to stories and we learn through stories. I think that's the best form of learning. Even in schools, I think if you read about history, that's a way of learning. Stories always will be the best way to educate and bring awareness to emotional intelligence or emotional quotient.
Good.
Apart from that, I think the best way is modeling as well. As parents, we also have to model how we want our children to, like, if it is a frustration, how do we show frustration, and or rather how do we deal with frustration? I think if we can model it for them, they will also learn how to respond when they feel a certain feeling.
Yes, that's so true. And we sometimes forget that children are they're so observant. So even when
Mhm.
you think they're not watching, they are watching. And the ones that can verbalize would talk about it at some point later and say, "Oh, you did this." Or if you tell them to respond a different way, some children will actually tell the parents, "But this is what I saw you do," and things. So we need to be very conscious that our children, they're like sponges. They're constantly watching
Yeah.
and observing us. Yes.
Yes.
So now when parents have a child who is distressed, and this happens a lot, so children can fall into distress at any time. How can parents respond with co-regulating them?
That's an excellent one. And I think distress shows up differently in different child. In every child, it's not the same. And even by age, it varies, is what I believe. Like my younger one, he's only 3 years. So for him, everything is so physical. He will hit, kick, shout, and make it so evident that he's either in pain or he's angry or he's hurt. Whereas my older one, he's 7, he's still a little physical. If something does not go his way, he will either kick or drop something to show that he is not in acceptance to what is happening. But the intensity is much lower when compared to the younger one. So I think over time, they learn what is okay, what is not okay. And
Mm,
as we are modeling it as well. And as they grow into teenage, if you have opened the space for them to express themselves, they will use the words, they will use the vocabulary to express and share those feelings. But if you have not provided that space, like you said earlier, that then the child will either go into the shell and not know how to express, not know, and they might bundle up everything together. The feeling of overwhelm, anxiety, stress, everything for them will feel the same. They will not know how to differentiate, they will not know how to respond to them.
mm,
And for some kids, even when they know, they may not vocalize it. Some
mm,
might, writing, I like to write. Some might like to draw. Some might like to call and talk to someone that they feel safe with. So I think every person, when they are distressed, they react in a different way. And for us as parents, I think our one responsibility is having that open space for two-way communication to happen.
great. Very good. Very good practical strategies that you've given there, because those emotional outbursts can be really intense. And I think what we need to do is not wait for the outbursts to happen before we begin to build these strategies, is actually start incorporating these strategies very early on as part of their development, so that as they're growing, they're learning, so that when that scenario arises, then, can begin to use some of those strategies. I think that's what usually happens with some of our parents, is the outburst can happen at any time, at the most unexpected time. And then it becomes panic. Some of the things the parents will say might escalate the behavior. So it's just to encourage parents to begin to do those things quite early, so that they have those tools in the bag. And one of the things you've said is actually the parents need to model healthy emotional communication and expressions. The way we talk to them, something goes wrong, how do we react? How do we still love the child and do the things we need to do?
Yeah.
Are there some other examples that parents can use in modeling that healthy emotional expression? What can parents do?
I think one is when situation arise for them to be conscious and model it themselves. Or on the other hand, like yesterday, what happened was my both the boys were playing with a soft hammer, which is used to push the ball into a small tunnel. And my younger one accidentally hit the older one with that hammer, and the older one was really hurt and he was crying. Younger one came running to me, crying, shouting, hitting me. At first, if you're just looking without the context, you would think that he's angry. But he was feeling guilty, he was scared because his brother was crying. He didn't know how to react. I tried to carry and hug him. He didn't let me. He started hitting me with that hammer. And then I started talking to him. I started breaking it down. This is a toy. This we use only for the ball. But if this goes on anybody's body, it will hurt and it might leave a mark. And I started just talking through, and then automatically he stopped crying. And then he let me hug him. So I hugged him. I said, "Are you feeling sorry? Are you feeling bad that your brother is hurt?" He said yes. And then I let him down. He ran to his brother, hugged him, and apologized for what he did. So I think it is one, validating, acknowledging, and breaking it down, because for them that seems like a big thing, right? And they
Yeah.
cannot break it down as to what is happening. So if you can break it down that this happened because this happened, and help them get to the outcome and give them the option. I could have just told him, "You hit your brother, go apologize, go tell him sorry." If I do that, he will be more reluctant to do it. But I opened the space of, explaining and making him aware about the feeling that his brother is going through. And then he felt sad, felt sorry, that he felt like he has to apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very great example that you've used, and I see this quite commonly in my clinics as well, where something will happen, the child will have a huge big reaction, and and just escalate up to 0 to 100, and the parents just find it difficult, and they're like, what can I do, what can I do now? I think what you've just explained is it's fantastic, because it's allowing the parent to actually provide the space for that child. And exactly what you've described, a lot of children will not want to be hugged, then some of them might run away and just escalates more. But it's beautiful to listen to how he transitioned from just being very angry, not hugging you, to then understanding when you broke things down, to giving you a hug, and then going to do that to his brother as well. And thank you for sharing that, because many parents would have experienced something like that.
Yeah.
And
And just want to saying that, not always the same
yeah.
strategy works, not always the same order of the strategy works. And I think
Mm.
as parents, we all have that intuition in us that, we know how our child would react when something's happen. And if you can pause for a second before you react and think and then respond, I'm sure you will know the best way to respond. I mean, this is something that worked for me, may not work for another parents, but if they pause and then react, I am sure they will know the best way to respond.
Yeah, that's I just want to ask the scenario where you've got two parents who have different ways of reacting. How do the parents deal with that? Because one parent might be trying to give the child the space to express themselves, and the other parent will be shouting at the child to stop crying and all that. How do you deal with that scenario?
And I mean, I'll be honest, I faced that too. I mean, both my husband and I had different parenting styles, and mainly because we grew up differently. So, the one thing that works for us is we use another language that our children don't understand. So, we communicate in third language, saying that, let me take a lead, got it figured out. I will ask your help when I need. And so that way we communicate with each other so that, it doesn't escalate. So we use a third language so that, we are not bringing that awareness. Now our children are catching up and know that anytime we speak in another language, they know that we're talking. But it
No.
is hard because, as humans, we want to react and we do react. But it is for us to catch ourselves and know to stop and let one person lead. Certain situations, I know my son will not react to me or respond to me. So I will step back. I will let him, if it is something that has to be done, he follows my husband's instructions more than mine.
And that's the thing. It's about working together. You might not always have the same way, but you've highlighted that there's situations where he will be more effective at giving that instruction, and that similarly happened to me. And I think one good thing was that initially, when obviously my husband had no knowledge of children's emotional development and all that, so again, we all come from different backgrounds and the way we were parented. Sometimes we just carry that straight into the way we parent our children. So he was coming with all that. Child shouldn't be crying for nothing, for no reason, and all that. But what was interesting was I had to spend a lot of time telling him about children's development. This is a different culture. You can't just tell a child do this and the child does that. The children want to understand why they've been told to do things and have the reason why. So, but one good thing about him was that he was now learning. So sometimes when he said something that was that would make them even more upset, I would wait and talk to him about it at another time and say, actually, you shouldn't have said it that way. This is how it would make them feel. This is what you need to do. And over time, there has been a lot of
Mhm.
change in the way he now communicates. And because of his understanding, and he himself will say, oh, maybe you should talk to them about that and all that. So parents need to work together, recognize
Yeah.
each one's strengths, recognize where
Mhm.
each person will be more effective in one approach and the other, just like what you've shared, Shruti, which is it's not one size fits
But
all, but mm,
I do want to call out that we are still a work in progress. We
yeah,
still clash into each other
yeah,
in terms of our parenting skills. But when I feel strongly about certain way that it has to be responded, I start modeling it for him. I start
mhm,
showing him how I get down to the child's I make an eye contact, express, and show him not verbally but by demonstrating it.
yeah.
And the next time he picks up on those cues. But so the, I think it's always going to be a work in progress. And I have spoken to so many parents, and this is one thing they constantly talk about is we don't agree on the same thing. That husband and wife will not agree on the same thing about 90% of the time. Yeah, we'll know and we'll make it work. Just being open to each other will help.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what sometimes causes conflict with one
Right.
parent feeling, no, you're not doing it right, and the other one feeling you're not doing it right. So I think this is a
And that
very
ends up
key, yeah,
as a confusion in the child's mind, like which
absolutely.
is the right. uh,
Yeah, yeah. It's so important. Good. So what are the daily routines and activities that help children's emotional development?
my daily routine is very simple. And I'm sure there are parenting coaches who will have like a checklist of things that we need to have. And even yoga. Yoga talks about having like a rhythm and ritual. And having like a set routine is actually good for children because when you have repeated schedule or repeatedness in your schedule, children know what to expect. And that takes away the anxiety, the stress of not knowing what is coming ahead. So I think overall structure, if you can ensure that you have a base structure, like what time they wake up and what time they go to bed, that is great. For me, I look at few things on a daily basis. Like for me, the major thing is connection. I try to find times where I can connect with both my children. For my younger one, it is when I'm dropping him off to the daycare. He always prefers it's at walkable distance, his daycare. So I offer him every day, do you want to walk or do you want to drive? And he always prefers to walk. And so when we walk, we look at the plants, we look at everything around us, we talk to the sun, we do all sort of things. And that's my way of connecting with him. And that's a very small ritual, which I think he enjoys. And that's why he always prefers us to walk versus drive because drive would be
Mm.
shorter. With my older one, I cannot do the same because morning is always rush and he is not a morning person. So both of us are not in the same state of mind for us to
Mm.
connect in the morning. So I connect with him once he's back from the school, when I'm picking him and dropping from other activities that he's part of, or at night. But one thing that we do without fail, whether we are on vacation, whether we are having a busy day, is the bedtime routine. We have just three simple things that we do. We read a story or we make up a story. One of us tells a story about a trip or anything. It could be anything. And then the second thing is we say, few prayers, and then we either say a little affirmation or share some gratitude, depending on, how the day went by. So these are the three things we never miss, no matter where we are, how busy we are. And so for me, routine or something is keeping it as simple as possible so that you don't miss. And when you don't miss it, that helps the child feel safe and know that, okay, this is what to expect, and if this is happening, then it's time for me to go to bed. So I try to keep it simple, but I'm still working on figuring out like a proper ritual or rhythm for the day.
That's great. No, thank you so much for putting that in context, because I think it was our last podcast or two podcasts, we had a guest who was discussing sleep. And one of the things that he stressed was how the nighttime going to bed is the sum of what has happened throughout the day. And it's that
Mhm.
bedtime routine that you said is a time to actually get that child to unwind, to distress from all the things that have happened during the day, you helping to reset that child so that they can wake
Mhm.
up fresh the next morning. It's so important for parents out there that having a consistent routine, bedtime routine, your child would grow into that. I mean, my daughter is, we used to have this consistent routine when they were young. My husband was very good at setting routines and bedtime routine. I would be busy with work and all that. So he was very good with that. But it's just amazing. I've watched her as an adult that she has kept that routine. And even whatever she's doing, many times she'll say, "Well, I have to go to bed." And she still kind of
Mhm.
has put in her own routines that she does before bedtime because she just feels it settles her. So we can't estimate the value of having consistent routines and building it quite early for the children. So it's good to start it when they're young because it will go through with them. If
Yes.
they have a chaotic day, it's going to affect them. So thank you for stressing that as well. How can parents build resilience in children?
That's a very difficult answer. I mean, I think one way to learn is through experience, and the second way is, like we've spoken about, is modeling. Modeling and breaking down situations and explaining what certain emotions feel like and providing ways to respond. That's how they will learn and relate. And when they are feeling a certain thing, making them the space, giving them the space, and helping them, providing the context. Like the teens talked about, is we don't want your advice. I mean, we love your advice. We want it, but not at the time when
Yeah.
something is feeling really big in us. So
Mm,
I think helping them break that down, giving them the understanding of how to look at a situation. And so when we are away, they are able to break it down for themselves.
mm,
It does not happen overnight. It takes consistent practice. And like you said, you got to start early. You start early with small choices, like the early childhood expert that I spoke to recently. She said that start with small decisions that they could make, like food choices. Do you want to have a peanut butter sandwich, or do you want to have another, give them a snack choice and help them differentiate why they should pick a healthy option. So start building that habit of making them decide. And as they get older, increase the complexity, is what she said. Increase the complexity of the choices that you give to your children. So that way they know how to decipher for themselves what is right versus what is wrong, what am I feeling? How do I respond? So over time, by opening that space and giving them, making up situations if need be. If you see that everything's going smoothly, then make up situations for them to experience different feelings so they
Yes.
get to know what each of them. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. And also, you talked a lot about movement. It's good to help them
Right.
to learn how to put that as part of their daily activities as well. People, I
Of
think
course.
we need as parents to encourage movement. Some parents get worked up if they feel the child is, just exerting energy and moving about a lot. But we should encourage movement for children. And sometimes some children are emotionally withdrawn. How can you support these children?
I mean, I can speak to it myself because for the longest time, I didn't have the vocabulary to express my feelings, my emotions. I couldn't differentiate what I was feeling and I couldn't verbalize what I was feeling. So I would always stay silent and hold it within myself. And it's only in the last few years that I have figured out what I'm feeling and what's the best way to communicate. Initially, I learned how to communicate, and when I communicated, it offended, rubbed against either my husband, my family, or my kids. And now I've figured out what is happening to me and how is the best way to communicate. And not always do I get it right, but at least I've improved from 0 to maybe 50 or 60%. And for me, writing always helps to kind of dump everything in my head out on the paper. That way I can process everything and then I know how to react. So yoga has helped me transform completely. And this, I give yoga the credit completely. But coming back to your question, giving the space, right? I'll give you an example, maybe not an appropriate one. I had a group of children, 7 of them, 6 of which were girls and only 1 boy. And so that boy, it's not a withdrawal, but it was awkward for him, right? There were days that his mom would call and say that he does not want to come. And when he comes into the class, he would find the most corner spot and hide himself. He would literally wrap the mat around him and do the things inside the mat or find a blanket or build something around him that he's not seen.
I didn't want to be
And
seen,
then
yeah.
over time, I didn't push him. Initially, I opened the space saying, "Why don't you come forward?" And then I realized that how awkward it could be. And then I started putting out challenges where I knew he can show his skill sets, where he would build that confidence. And then he started performing and he was able to do certain challenges better than the others. And that's when he realized that it doesn't matter if it is only 6 girls and 1 boy. I don't really have to care. And then he started coming forward in the class and he was okay taking the front seat versus being in the corner. So I think that taught me that patience and willingness to try different things, different approaches can help anyone who is having that withdrawal symptoms to kind of bring them onto the light.
Very good. It's about taking it in small steps, not wanting to
Right.
tackle everything on the same day, which is very good because you've just shown us clearly how it wasn't one day that you moved from being there to coming to the front. You took it in small stages with him. And one thing I like was how you respected his decision to stay at the back and cover himself, but you
Hmm.
gradually got into that space to talk to him. So he was clearly interested in what was going on, but he didn't know how to break that barrier. But you met him there and just gradually helped him. And I think that's one of the key messages from what you've said is that when we see children who are withdrawn, it's not going to drag them to the front or trying to just tell them you've got to come to the front or nothing because people could use different approaches, but it's actually looking at the context and understanding. And that's what you did really well, Shruti, is that you understood how he would feel. This is happening in schools all the time. This is happening in different places, at home, in gatherings. There is that child who would feel really awkward and not want to come out. So I think you've really explained that to us well. So now parenting is tough. Parenting can be exhausting.
Oh,
There's never
yes.
a time that you say you are 100% with it. Some parents feel guilty, which is not what we want. We want parents to know that it's a work in progress. And I think that I liked what you kept on saying, that you're not there yet. You're still working on it for yourselves. So what advice do you have for parents who feel they're getting it wrong? What's your advice?
Yeah, if you ask me, I have been there and I still find myself in situations that I feel so helpless. If now, if you ask me as a kids yoga instructor, if I can manage the emotions, manage the class, I would give myself about 90-95% of the times I can manage it. But when it comes to my own kids, I'll be honest that not always do I know the best way. And it is because of my own emotion, my own, I mean, more than my emotion, it's my responsibility. My responsibility that gets kicked in, and a certain way that I expect my children to behave also kicks in, making me react and respond differently. I think the responsibility and the expectation I have for my children becomes my own barrier of way I respond to them. So the way I deal with my children is going to be a work in progress. And what I keep telling myself is the example of a tree, right? Don't lose hope. Like the tree loses leaves during the fall and grows back in spring. So look at every day as a fresh start and try to build on and make sure it is not drastic. Today, you stand for something, and tomorrow, don't completely have a 360 on it. Make small incremental shifts from where you are to where you want to be. Make small incremental shifts, and that is great too. And there's one saying in India, which is in Hindi, which roughly translates as making mistake is nature, because we are human, we will make mistakes, so that is nature. Accepting is culture. So once you know that you made a mistake, you accept it, then that shows that you acknowledge and you value it. And rectifying and working towards a mistake is progress. So if you keep that in front of your mind, it kind of takes the pressure off completely that you will make mistakes. But the best thing for a parent to do is accept it. Accept it and tell them that you were wrong, and then tell them or come up with a solution of how you will rectify it or what will you do in turn to fix it. And I think all the children that I've spoken to for the podcast and before and after, everyone has acknowledged that yes, we know parents are humans too and they will make mistakes. We are absolutely fine with that. All we expect them is that they don't bring in their parent ego saying that no, it has to be done this way. Say that yes, we are wrong, and let's move on from there.
Yeah, you're so right. I remember once when my daughter said to me, "Mom, I am not your patient," because every time I was trying, she said something. She said, "No, but I'm not your patient. You need to listen to me," because I would be trying to say something to her that, okay, this is what this. And I had to have a lot of change within myself to say, actually, can't have a ready answer for things like that. And that's helped me a lot. So actually working with my own kids on this journey has helped me to be a better clinician and pediatrician, because it's helped me to be able to understand that when children come, they're not just another person coming in and that I have the answers. I have had to learn how to take each child and understand the context, the scenario. So it's a very good, it's great advice that you've given, that, and I like that analogy of human, culture, and, being able to rectify is just, it's great because it just makes us take away that guilt from ourselves, which most times it's so common. It's like, well, why is this happening? I'm supposed to know this. Why is it not working now? So that's really powerful. And just coming towards the end, honestly, Shruti, it's been an amazing conversation. I could sit down here and talk to you from now until, because it's been really enlightening. We touched on this and we felt that there are many of us, and in the Western world, many parents have migrated from their cultures. They've been brought up differently. We've moved into a different world where we're raising our children, and suddenly our children are wanting their voices to be heard. Many of us grew up in cultures where, they said this, you did it. Your parents said this to you, you did it. You didn't argue. If you argued or spoke back, it was felt that was a taboo. You didn't do that. And so we have this conflict many times which parents are experiencing when they move to different cultures and wanting to maintain. And the thing is, many parents want to stick to, they would say, I turned out well, and that's because of the way my parents brought me. If they did not bring me up that way, I would not be who I am. So how can parents view differently from their own childhood?
That's an really great question. I actually did a survey. I had put out a survey within the community, and about 44 parents responded. And out of 44 parents, 50 of them said their parenting style with their children is influenced by how they were parented as a child. And about 40 of them said to an extent, the way they parent today is influenced. So almost 90% of them agree the way they parent is how they were parented as a child. Only 10% of them said that they are making conscious effort to change how they are parenting. And which to me says a lot, right? Because subconsciously we are behaving, we are mirroring what we got, what we liked. And do I want to change everything
Mm,
about what I received? Probably not. So I think for me as parent, where I am now in between, I want to look back and see what I got, what helped me. I want to continue that. And things that I didn't get, I felt there was a lack. Like for me, the emotional literacy was something that I lacked. That my parents thought, keeping the emotions with themselves will protect me. But it in turn made me helpless that I couldn't understand. And it took me a while to figure that out. I mean, I'm not saying what they did was wrong. What they did was their understanding of how to
yeah.
parent, their understanding of why it should be done a certain way. But today, I don't maybe align with that, and I want my children to be able to communicate and express themselves. So this is something that I'm changing for myself and for my children. So, and one other thing, I grew up in like joint family. I had my grandparents living with us, my great grandmother living with us, my uncle living with us. So there were things that when my parents were not available, I got that love and care from the extended family. And that is so hard for us to provide when we are
Yeah.
living so far away from our family.
Yeah.
And so anytime we travel to meet with our friends or family, like my sister stays in California, anytime I go there, there are certain skill sets that I know I lack. Like my brother-in-law is very adventurous. I ask him to take my kids and show that adventure, teach them how to be adventurous. It is about identifying what you are good at, what you lack, and finding the other people around you to help support those skill set in your children, because I cannot be 100% and I cannot give the 100% to my children. There's only, I might be 70 or whatever percent. Yes, so it is understanding my strengths and my areas that I probably will not be able to provide or nurture that aspect of maybe a art form or an adventure. I seek for the community around me to provide that experience for my children, because I want my children to be well rounded. But I am certain that I cannot give that. I cannot be an artist. I cannot be a musician. I cannot be all of that for them. So I'm hoping and relying on the community around me to expose my children into different aspects that will help them understand what they really like and maybe pick up those skills along the way.
Thank you so much. I think you've touched on a very key point, and I think we brought this out during one of the podcasts. It's about identifying your community. I think that's the benefit of what we had when we were growing up, that you could easily go to XYZ home, and you almost worked like a team, and it was fluid and you could go in and out. And our children are growing up in a scenario where that is not readily available. So I think when a lot of children are exposed to that, they feel enriched if they carry that on as they grow older. So we've been fortunate to have communities of people around us, which the children knew from when they were small. And some of those things that we've done is something that they've loved and carried on and want to carry on to their own generation. But it's also helped them that it's almost like you have another way where positive modeling of behavior is, they're seeing somebody else outside their immediate family modeling those good behaviors as well. So we just can't be everything. Yes. So,
Yeah.
wow.
Parents listening really take that and helps them take the pressure off, because
Yeah.
initially, not as a parent but as a wife, I wanted to be everything for my husband, and I
Yeah.
wanted my husband to be everything for me. But over time I realized that I need my girlfriends for me to go and vent the same kind of, the relief that I get when I sit down and talk to my friends. I will not get the same kind of response when I share the same thing with my husband. He'll be like, yeah, okay, fine. That's not what I want, right? So I think that is when I realized that I cannot be 100% to someone, and that person cannot be 100% to me. And we need to find, and I think this also Barack Obama, she shared in one of her interview that, she has that community. She does not rely on Obama for everything. She has her girlfriends to, she goes for pedicure or manicure, and she has certain people for certain things.
Yeah.
And so I hope parents listening take that pressure off, that they don't have to be everything for their children. Find those people that they can trust and take the help of them to kind of build that skill set for your child.
Amazing. Wow. It's been an enriching episode, Shruti. It's been enriching. We've learned so much about connecting with children. We've learned so much about children's emotional skills and how we can, as parents, we can come down to the child's level to give the space for them to communicate with us, because a lot of emotional outbursts is a communication of a feeling, and it's about parents learning how to build that in their daily activities, about listening to the child, giving the space, understanding why that child is having that outburst, and how you've talked a lot about different ways in which we can do that connection. We can give that space. You've given lots of good examples, like using modeling it ourselves, using stories, creating time for interacting with that child. You understand your child by knowing what works for each child. And I go back to your phrase where you can't use the same lens for each child. You have to know each child to use the appropriate method. And we've talked about being consistent with the routines that we put in and starting that early as well. And for parents, we've talked a lot about how nobody's getting it perfect. Nobody's 100% there. So don't be too hard on yourselves, parents listening out there. We're all work in progress. Despite the fact that I've been a pediatrician for over 30 years, I have gotten it wrong as well. And it's about learning. Pediatric textbooks and all that is not the same as living life in a practical. It doesn't give you a manual. And so you've told parents not to be hard on themselves, and also realizing that they have a community that can help provide certain things for, and support them in that journey. We're all on a journey, and if it doesn't go well today, I like the tree analogy where you said, different seasons, the fact that the leaves fall another day, the leaves will come back on. So
Right.
always look at the next day with a fresh eyes. I'm so thankful for everything you shared today. I just want you to tell us about the Conscious Children's Project and how our audience can connect. So how can people reach you? How can they get to know more about your podcast? How often do you have it, and what can they get? And your yoga sessions, your online yoga sessions.
Yes. I mean, everything about the yoga, they can learn through the website. It's called muditascircles.com. And in terms of the podcast, it is a small initiative. And I call it a project because it's a work in progress, like we talked about. And it is not something that is set in stone. I am going in as a curious mom. And everything that I've shared today is the wisdom that I've gathered by just talking to these people, whether it's experts in certain areas or parents themselves dealing with the realness, struggles, and daily challenges. And children, I mean, let's not forget, we are learning and talking all of these for the children. And if we don't give them the opportunity and don't listen to them, then this whole thing that we are learning is lost. So, this initiative is bringing all the three perspectives together: experts, parents, and children, talking about one single topic every time and breaking it down from their lenses, helping parents connect and understand that it's not just me, it is everybody feeling the same way. And for children to share their voice of how they want to be nurtured. Because sometimes, because we've grown up, we were a child once, but we forget what it is like to be a child. And we try, sometimes our ego comes in our way or whatever comes in our way, that we don't know the best way to respond. And it could also be like we've moved countries, or because of the generation gap, there's a lot of distance and barrier that we've built. So hoping that, the children perspective will help us remind how it was to be a child and help us bridge that generational gap. And the expert perspective is more of a pathway for us to kind of know what is an ideal scenario, but not necessarily as a rule book, but something for us to strive towards. Yeah.
Thank you. Amazing. And what's the website for the Conscious Children's Project?
It's called the Conscious Children Project. It is, I mean, you can listen to it on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcast, and also on Substack. So you can listen to them on any of them. And all of those links are also available through muditascircles.com. And you can always connect with me via Instagram, is where I'm mostly active on. And if anyone listening finds any value, I would really love to listen or hear about their thoughts.
Thank you so much, Shruthi, for all the wisdom and knowledge you have shared, your experiences. It's great to have real life stories and examples to just help us know that we are all working towards a common goal of
Right.
connecting better with the children. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll have you back in the future to tell us more about how things are going. And I really wish you the very best with this project because it is really great and it's really what parents need. Thank you.
Thank you. It's truly my honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.